The Battle for the Crystal, a BCS Preview, brought to you by WTVY and Alpha Insurance.
Is the running back. He's behind the fullback. Play action, roll right, throw, diving, incomplete. A goal line stand for the ages for the Fighting Irish. And the Fighting Irish have finished an undefeated regular season. And now they will head to Miami.
Murray got it, but the clock is running.
That's the one thing he didn't want to do.
Game over. Alabama faces Notre Dame for the national championship in Miami.
So that's how we got here. Alabama beating Georgia in the SEC Championship Game, and Notre Dame topping USC at the Coliseum in Los Angeles, both of them earning trips to the national championship. Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Sun Life Stadium in Miami. Kim Allen alongside Matt Harris. In just 48 short hours, all the waiting will be done, and Alabama will face Notre Dame for the national title.
Alabama facing Notre Dame for college football's top prize for Notre Dame. A shot at a national title for the first time since 1988. Meanwhile, Alabama looking to win their third BCS championship in 4 years.
That's a pretty amazing run for the Tide. Nick Saban always quickly brought Alabama back to national prominence. After a quiet first year in 2007, they just went 7-6 that year. Saban has led the Crimson Tide to get this. I had to write it down. 12, 14, 10, 12, and 12 wins. That includes 2 BCS championships, 2 SEC titles, and 3 bowl victories. Most important to Tide fans, Alabama is nationally relevant once again, entering each year as a contender for a national title. Saban can add a 15th title to the Tide's trophy case on Monday night, but he's not thinking about history, just what it will take to beat Notre Dame.
Notre Dame's got a really good team. They got a great defensive team with great front stuff, and they've got great size and very physical. Very similar to how we try to build our team. They just have great team chemistry and play well together. So this is going to be a very challenging game, no doubt.
Saban is 67-13 at Alabama, with 6 of those losses coming in his first season with the team.
It took the former coach of Cincinnati little time to wake up the echoes in South Bend. Brian Kelly entered his 3rd season at Notre Dame with little fanfare, but that changed quickly. Notre Dame ran the table, surviving several close games on its way to the BCS title game. Kelly had similar success at Cincinnati, where the lights weren't nearly as bright. Now, he's 1 win away from the mountaintop at one of the nation's premier institutions.
Play the national championship game in Miami. It's not like any trip that they've had before. It's not like any trip that I've had before. And so there was the anticipation that when we got on the buses to the airport, that they were really excited about this trip. It's something that you dream about when you play this game and when you coach this game.
Kelly is 28-10 in 3 years at Notre Dame, including a sparkling 12-0 record this season. A youngster has led Notre Dame to the promised land. Everett Golson, just 19 years old, has quarterbacked this Irish club to near perfection. Golson broke onto the scene this season, beating out returning starter Tommy Rees for the starting job. He's led the Irish to big wins against teams like Stanford, Oklahoma, and USC, but this is his biggest stage ever. While Golson agrees the stakes are high, he claims he's not thinking about it.
I don't ride the wave too much, so I don't, I'm kind of just, focused on, what's played between, the yard lines or, what's played on the field. Can't really focus on, everything that's off the field because that's, out of my control.
Golson has thrown for 11 touchdowns and run for 5 more this season, despite missing an entire game and portions of 2 others.
And Alabama's offensive leader, surprising no one, that would be junior quarterback A.J. McCarron. The former St. Paul's out of Mobile star parlayed a solid sophomore season and then a fantastic performance in last year's BCS title game to a spectacular junior campaign that's brought the Tide back to the doorstep of another title. McCarron has thrown for more than 2,600 yards and 26 touchdowns with just 3 interceptions. His last-minute game-winning drive at LSU is considered one of the greatest in Tide history, and he knows it could take similar magic to beat Notre Dame, which features one of the nation's top defenses.
They do a really good job of making big plays on the defense side. You got to you try to, most of the time, your thinking going in the game is to limit the offense from big plays, but their defense makes a lot of big plays too.
McCarron delighted the Tide fan base last month when he announced he would return for his senior year. Now McCarron is just one of the driving forces behind Alabama's successful season so far.
Coming up, we'll look back at Alabama's road to Miami. And we'll have more on the career of former Andalusia star Nico Johnson, who will play his final game at Alabama on Monday night. That's straight ahead.
Welcome back, everyone. We're now joined by Paul Stockman here at Sun Life Stadium. And Paul, Alabama season really kind of all over the map. Incredible highs, one extreme low, and then a finish for the ages.
That's right, Kim. Alabama players and fans even have run kind of the gambit of emotions. Happiness, sadness, stress, but finally elation as they're finally going back to the big game. 2012 started off much like 2011 with a blowout win, this time over a national heavyweight. An opening contest in Dallas against number 8 Michigan resulted in a big win in Big D for the Tide. The Crimson Tide had no trouble disposing of their next 2 opponents. Western Kentucky was blanked 35-0 thanks to A.J. McCarron's 4 touchdowns. Bama's SEC opener against Arkansas was as one-sided as possible. 5 forced turnovers and more than 400 yards of offense led to a 52-0 drubbing. The next week, Alabama's shutout streak ended as Florida Atlantic scored the first TD in more than 12 quarters against the Tide. 1 touchdown, no sweat. The Crimson Tide cruised to a 40-7 win. Ole Miss took control early against Alabama for about 15 seconds. A 7-6 lead was erased just moments later when Christian Jones took the ensuing kickoff all the way back for a touchdown. Alabama stampeded their way to a 33-14 win. The Crimson Tide steamrolled through their next 3 SEC opponents. First on the chopping blocks, conference newcomer Missouri. Alabama poured on the points as rain poured down on the Tigers of Missouri, 42-10. Traditional rival Tennessee was blasted by the Tide the following week as A.J. McCarron had another A-plus performance. Undefeated Mississippi State was supposed to be the first team to challenge the Tide, but the Bulldogs were quickly muzzled as Alabama stayed on top of the college football world with no clear challenger in sight until they visited an old friend. The Bayou Bengals of LSU made Alabama fans collectively hold their breath. Late in the fourth quarter, a 17-14 lead was taken away by freshman sensation T.J. Yeldon. Yeldon took an A.J. McCarron pass 28 yards for the game-winning touchdown, crushing LSU and keeping their undefeated streak alive. But just 1 week later, a redshirt freshman did what 9 other teams couldn't. Eventual Heisman Trophy winner Johnny Manziel led his Texas A&M Aggies into Bryant-Denny Stadium and handed the Tide its first loss of the season. Alabama had a chance to win in the final seconds, but DeShazer Everett took away Bama's hopes with a late-game interception. Bama responded with back-to-back shutouts over Western Carolina and in-state rival Auburn in the most lopsided Iron Bowl in 64 years. Just 1 team stood between Bama and the national championship game, the SEC East champion Georgia Bulldogs. Both teams fought in a back-and-forth brawl. The tug-of-war between the SEC's best came down to the final drive, and the Tide took home the win by just 5 yards. Now Alabama stands at the doorstep of greatness with a possible 3rd national championship in 4 years. A win on Monday would earn the Tide the title of Dynasty. Alabama is riding a streak of 5 seasons with at least 10 victories, and 4 of those 5 seasons saw a dozen wins for the Tide, Kim.
That's an amazing streak for Alabama. The Crimson Tide's offense has been record-setting this year, but of course, it's defense that sets the tone for the Crimson Tide, and really that's been the case in every year of Nick Saban's tenure in Tuscaloosa. The Tide D has seen its share of challenges over the years, and this season has been no different. Some tests the Tide has passed, hammering Michigan QB Denard Robinson in the opener. Others, not so much, as Johnny Manziel led Texas A&M to a stunning upset of the Tide in Tuscaloosa. Now Alabama will face Notre Dame's Everett Golson, another shifty QB capable of producing big plays.
Some of the things he do is just like Johnny, but he's more of a scrambler to throw quarterback. But like I said, he can make plays on his feet, he can make plays on throwing the ball.
You definitely don't want them to extend plays. You know, they extend the play, you know, a big play can happen, and you want to eliminate big plays. So to contain them and eliminate them from extending the plays is going to be, ideal for us.
Alabama has forced 29 turnovers this season and ranks near the top of the nation in most statistical categories. Rejoined now by Matt Harris. And Matt, Alabama's defense young at several positions after so many of last year's stars moved on to the NFL, and that's really made players like Andalusia native Nico Johnson so valuable to this Tide defense.
That's right. Notre Dame linebacker Manti Te'o getting a lot of love, collecting a college football record, 7 individual awards, but Alabama linebacker Nico Johnson has something that Te'o doesn't, 2 rings.
This is my 4th year. I'm so blessed to play with these group of guys because, we put so much work into what we're doing.
That's Nico Johnson, senior linebacker, humble leader, hard worker.
He's a great player and also a great person. He's a great leader on the field, and you can come to him off the field. He's not those type of guys you can't really talk to once you get out of football. He's just a good person to be around.
Where I'm from, it's very rare, to get the opportunity I have. I've been blessed to take advantage of, the opportunity we have at hand.
The Andalusia native has in hand an opportunity to end his Alabama career with a bang in college football's grand finale. But you can't reach a 3rd national championship game in 4 years without struggle.
It was kind of difficult remotivating myself year in, year out because, I've been fortunate enough to play for 2 national championships, and, it was probably the hardest year, week in, week out, motivating myself.
Johnson found both the intrinsic and extrinsic motivation necessary to turn the tide in sight of national championship number 15.
This is my last game here as an Alabama player, and I'm going to try to enjoy it the best I can.
And Johnson is 3rd on the team in tackles this season, despite splitting time with Trey DePriest at linebacker.
Yeah, DePriest just a sophomore. He's a pretty good player. Johnson, of course, on the field usually. DePriest in passing situations. Johnson more against the traditional running sets. And he should see plenty of action when Notre Dame comes calling on Monday night. Paul Stockman will rejoin us with a look back at the road to South Beach for the guys from South Bend. When we come back, stick around.
Notre Dame is a historic program, but few people saw the Fighting Irish coming. And Paul, the Irish used a formula very familiar to Tide fans in order to punch their ticket to Miami.
That's right, Matt. It's kind of like a pretty simple formula. You take about 2 cups of defense, 3 cups of physicality, and a splash of athleticism, and you get this Notre Dame team. And that formula is a recipe for a BCS championship game. Notre Dame's season started much like Alabama's with a blowout on a neutral field. The Fighting Irish sunk Navy in Ireland as 19-year-old Everett Golson and running back Theo Riddick led the charge in a 50-10 victory. After sneaking away with a victory over Purdue, the Irish came back with a chip on their shoulder and bested number 10 Michigan State 20-3. The Irish 3-0 and off to their best start in 10 years. Next week, Manti Te'o and the defense shined in a low-scoring contest with rival Michigan. Denard Robinson and company didn't get into the end zone, and the Irish walked away victorious, 13-6. The Golden Domers got over their low-scoring performance the following week with a 41-3 shellacking of the Miami Hurricanes. Notre Dame ran for more than 300 yards against Miami. It was their first game with 300 yards rushing since November 2003. After stepping up offensively, Notre Dame got an additional boost defensively against Stanford. An overtime battle with the Cardinal came down to inches. Leading 20-13, Notre Dame's defense kept running back Stephon Taylor from crossing the goal line on 4th down. The Irish kept their undefeated season alive with their first 6-0 start since 2002. They were tested yet again the following week against BYU. The Cougars jumped out to a 14-3 lead, but Notre Dame held tough and were able to pull out a win on the strength of Theo Riddick's 143-yard rushing performance. Any doubts of Notre Dame's ability to hang with the big boys were quickly quieted when the Irish took Oklahoma to the woodshed with a 30-13 victory in Norman. Whispers of doubt became audible again when the Irish were challenged by an unranked Pittsburgh team. Down 20-6 in the 4th quarter, the Golden Domers clawed back to send the game to overtime. Notre Dame needed some luck, and they got it when Pitt missed a game-winning field goal in double overtime. A touchdown in triple OT was enough to give them the win and keep their undefeated record alive. The Irish had no trouble the next 2 weeks. Boston College fell thanks to a 200-yard, 2-touchdown performance from sophomore Everett Golson. The Notre Dame QB had another big game in a 38-0 win over Wake Forest. The Fighting Irish found themselves on the top of the college football world thanks to losses from Oregon and Kansas State. They defended their top spot and their ticket to Miami by taking it to USC. Once again, the defense for the Irish came through in a big way, stopping the Trojans with a goal line stand. Notre Dame punched their ticket to the cozy confines of South Florida from the LA Coliseum. Notre Dame finished the regular season undefeated, but their toughest test is their final test. The Crimson Tide are unlike any team the Golden Domers faced this season, and they may need more than the luck of the Irish to bring home the Crystal. Notre Dame will play for its first national championship since 1988, a game they won for the school's 13th championship, Matt.
And that Notre Dame team, explosive offensively. This year's team lived on defense. Led by Heisman finalist Manti Te'o and a dominant defensive line, the Fighting Irish D has been one of the best in the nation. Notre Dame allows less than 11 points per game, which leads all FBS schools. Now, the Irish must stop Alabama, which scores more than 38 points per game. Te'o says he can't wait to take his shot at the Tide, especially Alabama's stable of running backs.
That's football at its finest, and that's this is going to be an opportunity that we've been waiting for a long time. And to as a linebacker, to know that you're going to be run at.
Notre Dame allowed more than 20 points just once this season, giving up 23 to Pittsburgh in a triple overtime win in early November. Rejoined now by Kim Allen, and Kim, Manti Te'o will wrap up one of the greatest individual performances in college football history when he takes the field on Monday night.
Yeah, Te'o really having a dream season for Notre Dame, and the Fighting Irish, they've absolutely climbed on board, riding his monster senior campaign all the way to South Beach.
Teammates love him. Opponents fear him.
It's like Manti Te'o.
Numbers don't lie. Manti Te'o led Notre Dame's top-ranked defense with 103 tackles and 7 interceptions. Te'o was runner-up for the Heisman Trophy this season and won a record 7 individual awards. But Te'o knows only one thing will validate this season, a national championship.
For me, I've always been a believer that regardless of the situation, the field is still 120 yards long, football is still the same shape, and everybody straps on their chin strap the same way. And so, we understand that this is a big game, but at the end of the day, it's still football. And I think, when we start to do things, differently than we've done all season, that's when we're going to start getting into trouble.
Manti is easy to see, look at, and see his face and immediately be energized. So that's just the kind of guy that he is.
Earlier in the show, I said I had to write down how many wins Alabama had. I had to do the same thing for all the awards Te'o won, so I'm just going to read them off. An unbelievable list. Maxwell, Walter Camp, Lombardi, Nagurski, Bednarik, Butkus. He also took home the Lott Trophy, and he finished second in the Heisman Trophy voting. That's quite a season.
That's unbelievable. Certainly one of the greatest individual players we've seen in recent memory. We're not done quite yet here in Miami. When we return, we'll look back at the history of this series, which features 2 games for the national title. And we'll make our picks with just 48 hours to go until kickoff. Make sure you stick around.
Welcome back, everyone. The gang's all here to wrap up this show, and Alabama, they're no stranger to the BCS Championship Game. Crimson Tide earning bids to the big game in 2009 and again in the 2011 season, and of course both times the Tide got it done. In 2009, the Crimson Tide defense rose up, knocking Texas quarterback Colt McCoy out of the game in the first quarter. Mark Ingram and Trent Richardson had huge days, and the Tide would capture its first title since 1992, beating the Longhorns 37-21 at the Rose Bowl. 2 years later, it was an all-SEC showdown in the Big Easy as Alabama faced LSU. The rematch turned into a one-sided beating as the Tide steadily wore down the Tigers for a stunning 21-0 victory and the school's 14th national title.
Notre Dame is hoping to end a 24-year championship drought. The Fighting Irish captured the school's 13th national title after the 1988 season, beating West Virginia at the Fiesta Bowl. Lou Holtz led the Irish to a 12-0 record and wins over the top 3 teams in the nation on the way to the national title.
This will be the 6th meeting between Alabama and Notre Dame, and the 3rd with the national title hanging in the balance. In 1973, the Tide and Irish met in a showdown deemed the game of the century. Notre Dame would beat the Tide 24-23 in a matchup of undefeated teams, winning the AP national title, although the voters still tabbed Alabama #1 in the UPI poll. In 1975, it was a rematch, and the Irish would prevail again. Alabama entered the game ranked #1 and undefeated, but Notre Dame would stun the Tide 13-11 at the Orange Bowl, denying Bear Bryant's team a title for the 2nd time in 13 months. It was Ara Parsegian's final game as Notre Dame head coach, while Bryant would go on to win 2 more titles with the Crimson Tide.
Well, the time has come. We're going to break this down and make a pick. Start with Paul Stockman. Paul, give us a quick key to the game and who wins it.
All right, well, I certainly think the biggest key here is going to be experience. I know Barrett Jones earlier in the week said that it was not that big of a deal to them, but Bama's been here before. Nobody on Notre Dame's been here before. It's going to be interesting to see how they can handle it when the lights are on and it's prime time. My hair is saying to go with the Irish, but I'm going to go. My heart is telling me Alabama. I got to go with Alabama in this one.
Matt, what do you think?
I think it's going to come down to Alabama's rushing attack, obviously with Eddie Lacy and TJ Yeldon, the first duo in Alabama history to rush for more than 1,000 yards. If they can get going, it's going to be a long night for the Fighting Irish. In the long run, I think second half, Alabama's just going to wear down Notre Dame.
And I think quality of depth, the issue. Top 3 for Notre Dame's defense, very good. I think Alabama has too many good players. I'm not going to be surprised if this game gets out of hand. I think Alabama wins it decisively, and I think Alabama more physically dominant. I think they get it done on Monday night. Well, that's going to wrap things up from Sun Life Stadium. 2 nights from now, this place behind us is quiet right now. It's not going to be quiet in 48 hours. It's going to be rocking when the Crimson Tide and Fighting Irish battle for the national title. Enjoy the game, and thanks for watching.
The Battle for the Crystal, a BCS preview, has been brought to you by WTVY and Alpha Insurance.